And that was Richard Kojonyako with a wrap of events during the special voting exercise in Cape Coast on Tuesday. Now, away from election-related news, the UK has approved the Pfizer BioNTech coronavirus vaccine for mass use next week. The country has already pre-ordered 40 million doses to deal with the virus, which has claimed over 1.4 million lives worldwide since it broke out in Wuhan, China. Since the outbreak, there's been a race against time to produce an efficient vaccine, and the news of this one being approved for mass use has been greeted with a lot of excitement. Not to burst anyone's bubble, but should we be really excited? Especially for those of us in Africa and Ghana? Well, I've been joined by an immunologist with the West African Center for Cell Biology of Infectious Pathogens, WASPIP, Dr. Yaw Bediako. Doc, good news or not?
Good morning. It's nice to be on your show again, Bernice. I think it is good news. I mean, whenever there's a vaccine that is approved for use anywhere, I think we should be excited. This is something that in many ways is unprecedented. Most vaccines take over 10 years to develop. So the fact that we have 3 that have been greeted with certain amount of success, I think is something we should be enthusiastic about. However, I think, many scientists would say we have to temper the enthusiasm with a certain amount of, of caution. Because of the nature of the pandemic, everything is being rushed, including the sort of the regulations, or at least the registration process. So typically, clinical trials like this would take a lot longer, and we'd amass a lot more data before we knew for sure how effective a vaccine was. Given the emergency of this situation, these timelines have been condensed. So the Pfizer vaccine that you're talking about that has recently been approved in the UK has shown very encouraging results so far. But in most cases, these would be viewed as quite preliminary. The number of, they vaccinated basically 40,000 people. They saw 170 odd cases. 90% of these cases were in the placebo. So that gives you, the placebo arm of the trial, suggesting that the vaccine itself was maybe 90%, 95% effective. But 170 people is a very small number out of 40,000. So I think many scientists are cautiously optimistic. I think we should celebrate, yes, but only time is going to tell truly how long this protection lasts. Once again, the trial was relatively short. It was a month or 2. So Pfizer is collecting more and more data, continue to follow these people to see if the protection continues to last. So I think we have to be a little bit cautious. In terms of our part of the world, I think we have to be even more guarded in our joy, because the fact that the UK has 40 million, has ordered 40 million doses, Ghana has yet to order a single dose, right? And this is purely economics. These vaccines are not cheap. And large industrialized countries like the US and in Europe have pre-ordered significantly high numbers of these. They've basically stockpiled or pre-ordered large numbers of these vaccines that far outstrips the ability of these companies to actually manufacture them. So, this vaccine, all 3 vaccines actually currently out are 2-dose regimens. So if the UK has ordered 40 million, that means they can vaccinate 20 million people. Africa has a population of 1.3 billion, which means we'll need double that number of doses. And that is way above the number that these companies are going to be able to make in the next year. And as I said, they already have pre-orders from large countries.
All right.
So that is the issue now that we have. No matter how useful or efficacious the vaccine is, there needs to be engagement to make sure that African countries get access to this vaccine.
All right, Doc. So there's a lot of questions flying through my mind. Let me just start from this point. So for us here in Africa, is it prudent that we start or we continue, as we're told, we are trying to develop our own vaccine? Is it prudent that we continue on that tangent, seeing that, like you mentioned, the sample for the trials very small, and I'm not sure anybody in any African country was used as a study, and we know how different sometimes these things work in different parts of the world. So should we be still pursuing that agenda of creating our own vaccine, or we can pull the brakes at least? And does it work this way? Are they allowed to also send maybe the method or the formula for the vaccine, and we make our own localized version? How does it work?
So, I mean, I think vaccine development is years, it takes years to do, and you have to build up the capacity to do so. Currently in Africa, we really don't have the ability, even in South Africa, which is probably the most advanced, we don't currently have the ability to actually develop, or at least fully develop, a vaccine. And I actually don't think any work for COVID anyway is happening in that direction. What we do have the ability to do, and this is happening, is we have certain places have the capacity to test, to conduct clinical trials. So actually, the Pfizer vaccine was tested in South Africa. That was the only African country that I'm aware of was included in the trial. And you raised a very important point. I've heard on the media lately people talking about we don't want to test any vaccine in Ghana. We don't want to test anybody's vaccine. That is actually, I would say, a very poor way of thinking. Because in order, like you said, for us to know whether or not these vaccines work in our population, they need to be trialed here. And I like to, assure your viewers, before a vaccine is allowed to be used in a clinical trial, it's gone through a lot of safety checks. There may still be one or two adverse events, but it really is the nature of research that you need to test these things out. And so we mustn't exclude ourselves. I've heard even sometimes health officials talking about how we won't test any vaccine in Ghana. That to me is the wrong approach. We should be looking for ways to include ourselves in these clinical trials. Of course, making sure that things are safe and verified before we expose our population to them. But that is the only way we will know how well these vaccines work in our populations. In terms of sharing the formula, this is intellectual property. These companies have invested billions of dollars in developing this vaccine. They need to recoup their investment. So I know that there has been some engagement to allow, I think the Serum Institute in India to produce large amounts of some of these vaccines for the developing world at a very low cost. And those kind of engagements need to continue. But it's not as simple as just saying, oh, give us the formula. They have invested billions of dollars. If they give us the formula and we start making it, how do they recoup their investment? So yesterday I heard an official of the Africa CDC say Africa requires about $12 billion to be able to purchase vaccines for 60% of the population of the continent. So I think we need our governments to start figuring out where they are going to get $12 billion, whether it's through aid or through governments themselves ponying up cash, to really begin to now start placing orders the way countries in Europe and North America have done. And then, the WHO, I will finally add, the WHO has a system called COVAX, which is basically trying to leverage rich countries to pay for the vaccine for poorer countries. Because, of course, if they vaccinate their population, but the virus is still in Africa, then it sets up an issue where you could get reintroduction of the virus, right? So it is to their benefit if other countries, even if we can't afford it ourselves, get access to the vaccine. So there needs to be political pressure as well to encourage large industrialized countries to pay money or to support initiatives like COVAX that would hopefully provide the vaccine to less fortunate countries, especially on the continent.
All right, Doc, so we are told that the UK mass testing begins just next week. Elections begin here next week, at least. That's what we're looking forward to here in Ghana. So how far off are we from getting this vaccine? You've raised the issue of economics and the fact that many other countries have invested in, so they have an upper hand when it comes to ordering the doses. But apart from that, how realistic, what timeline will be the most realistic in terms of saying, okay, Ghana may receive this particular vaccine?
All right, so the most optimistic, and I think it was highly optimistic, the most optimistic sort of forecast I've heard is that we might see some vaccine on the continent in the second quarter of 2021. Now, I think that is quite optimistic, but that is what Africa CDC is hoping for, that there will be some vaccines perhaps available to the most vulnerable, so frontline healthcare workers and probably the very elderly or people with certain underlying conditions may get access to some vaccine by second quarter of 2021. But that is assuming that the funds required can be marshaled. But I would also add, this vaccine, especially the Pfizer vaccine that has been approved in the UK, requires significant cold chain. So it needs to be stored at minus 70 degrees, which is, 40 degrees colder than your standard freezer. And that means that when you think of using it in resource limited settings, even using it in the US and in Europe, they are going to have certain challenges. Now, how much more across Ghana? There are probably very few facilities in Ghana outside of Noguchi and here at Wakbip and maybe Kolebu. I don't think there are very many facilities in Ghana that have minus 80 freezers. So storing the vaccine would be a challenge. Transporting it across the country. I'm sure we've all seen the yellow fever and the polio vaccinations. They walk around with an ice box, a cooler. That won't work for this vaccine. You need dry ice. So logistically, this vaccine presents certain challenges that are going to have to be worked out beyond simply just getting access to the vaccine. But I've heard the Africa CDC say second quarter of 2021. So we can hope and pray that that is actually the case. But even that will not be for everybody. So it wouldn't be for all people in Ghana. It would probably be for a small segment of people. So I think we're looking end of 2021, early 2022 is probably the best bet. So I would agree with the Ghana Health Service that we need to stick with the guidelines. Stay with your mask, stay with your hand sanitizer, especially during the period of the election when we're all moving around. Stay protected, because just because there's a vaccine doesn't mean we're going to get it in Ghana just yet.
I appreciate your time this morning. Dr. Iyal Bediako is an immunologist with the WASPIP, and I appreciate talking to you every time. Hopefully the next time we'll be talking some good news with regards to Ghana receiving vaccines against COVID-19.